sometimes, the most important battles, they're fought without a single bullet. They rely instead on, precision, patience, and this relentless silent war for the human mind. Today, we're doing a deep dive into an operation so covert, so daring, that it literally never generated a single media headline. Operation Madrasa.
That's exactly right. We often think of national security threats as physical things, what we call a kinetic threat, right?
Yeah.
But this operation, it targets something much more insidious, ideological infiltration. We're looking at how India's intelligence bureau, the IB, successfully uncovered and dismantled a pretty sophisticated digital network. It was rooted abroad, sure, but was specifically poisoning the minds of young people right here in India.
And the whole thing kicked off with an officer not looking for like an explosion, but more like a faint digital heat signature. Let's set the scene a bit.
Yeah.
February 2025, you've got a technical surveillance officer sitting in a Delhi office, and he's observing this unusual pattern of digital activity. It wasn't malware, not explicit bomb plots, just something oddly repetitive and very heavily concealed.
Yeah, he was seeing the repeated consumption of specific material. It was being broadcast from just one single dedicated source, a Telegram channel.
Right. That channel was named Ada for Greece, 1453, Ru Islam, 1453, an Urdu language channel. And here's where the analysis gets, really subtle. When the IB first reviewed the material, the experts were actually surprised. They didn't immediately find those traditional hallmarks of, direct hate speech or violent incitement. So, okay, if it wasn't an obvious call to arms, what was the danger they were tracking?
Well, what's fascinating here is just how subtle it was. This was like a psychological slow drip. The messages weren't yelling for immediate violence, no.
Yeah.
They were consistently undermining the identity of the recipients, suggesting things like, you don't belong to India, that their true loyalty, their real homeland, lies with the caliphate, the Khalifa territory. The goal was ideological detachment, basically making them feel internally foreign.
Wow. That sounds incredibly sophisticated. And I gather they backed this up with powerful, specific visual triggers to really embed that external identity.
Oh, absolutely. The ideological push relied heavily on visuals, things designed to evoke a very specific pan-Islamist identity. You had photos of the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem, you saw Palestinian flags everywhere, and very specifically photos of the Turkish leader, Sultan Erdogan. All of this, paired with the text, it creates this whole lexicon, this visual language, designed to make the receiver look outward for their identity, not inward to their own community here.
Okay, now, this is where the technical trail takes a really bizarre turn, isn't it? The channel itself, it originated in Turkey, right?
Right.
But it was being routed through a server linked to Pyongyang's Obang ISP in North Korea.
Right.
North Korea. I mean, that feels like you're suddenly chasing a major international incident right there.
Yeah, but this is actually a perfect example of IB technical brilliance, you see. The officer realized pretty much immediately this had to be a strategic decoy. I mean, think about it. If you're routing sensitive ideological content through a notoriously opaque place like Pyongyang,
Yeah.
you're actively trying to make observers think the source is someone else entirely, right? So the IB, they didn't waste time chasing that geopolitical rabbit hole down to North Korea. They knew the likely source was Turkey, and the real priority had to be the consumption point right here in India.
Right, okay, so if the content is the poison, they had to find the mouth actually consuming it.
Mm.
How do you even go from a decoy IP address in North Korea to a physical location in India?
Well, it was painstaking work. Involved a lot of IP address mapping, traffic analysis. The trace narrowed dramatically, first showing specific recurring downloads in the Bijnor district of Uttar Pradesh. And from there, the team was able to pinpoint the heaviest, most consistent consumption. It was happening at a madrasa located near Deoband in Saharanpur.
Okay, so now the complexity just jumps. It goes from digital forensics to, wow, high-stakes human intelligence.
Yeah.
Operating near a religious institution, especially one that's deep in UP, that's extremely sensitive territory. Any overt police action could risk sparking massive communal issues. They needed eyes and ears inside, covertly.
Exactly. And this is where human assets become absolutely crucial. Indispensable, really. They utilized a deeply established asset, a man we'll just refer to as Dr. Zubir. Now, he wasn't a spy in the usual cloak and dagger sense. He was a Unani doctor. That's a practitioner of traditional medicine. And he'd built up enormous trust over years, providing healthcare medicine to children in the local madrasas.
Wait, I remember this part from the reports. The strategy they used to get him inside the target madrasa is just audacious. Dr. Zubir needed to live there temporarily.
Yeah.
So how do you, as an intelligence operative, explain moving into a highly sensitive, isolated location like that?
Yeah, it required genuine sacrifice and some really quick thinking. The officer arranged for his own home, which apparently was already a known weak structure common in UP, to be, let's say, strategically demolished or collapse. So suddenly, Dr. Zubir was genuinely homeless in the eyes of the local community. And the locals, trusting this doctor who'd helped their kids for years, they naturally suggested, hey, why don't you take temporary refuge at the madrasa until you can rebuild?
Right.
It was perfect, self-generated cover.
Wow. Just imagine having the foresight and the nerve to basically dismantle your own shelter just to gain that access. That really speaks volumes about the commitment of these field agents. Okay, so once he was inside, he started observing things, patterns that confirmed this wasn't just passive viewing. This was active radicalization.
Yeah,
right?
precisely. He discovered this crucial pattern. After the normal bedtime, the children weren't allowed to sleep. No, they were taken nightly to a special room for these intense lectures. And the setup was modern and pointedly secretive. The kids were given specific digital devices with pre-installed VPN servers, crucially. And the lectures themselves. They were delivered using content from a known figure, Nurullah Yildiz. He's a radical speaker, famous for his addresses in Turkey. And alarmingly, content from Yildiz had also surfaced in Kashmir previously.
Okay, so the agent now had the digital trail, even with the Pyongyang decoy. He has the ideological source, Turkey and Yildiz, and the local consumption point, the madrasa itself. But intelligence, it needs hard evidence, right? Something linking the local operation directly to foreign funding. What did he find?
Right. So while maintaining his cover as the helpful doctor, Dr. Zubir managed to observe some physical documents near that lecture room. This was the smoking gun, really. He found printed Qatar visa applications, which suggests movement, planning, and documents detailing a mysterious donor sending funds specifically for the madrasa's roof repairs. And crucially, those funds, they were being wired from eastern Istanbul.
Ah, so the entire nexus is confirmed. You've got the ideological warfare, digital, routed through a ghost network, and the financial support is physical, tangible, and traceable directly back to the source country, Istanbul. The external support was total.
Exactly. It demonstrated a fully integrated, externally funded effort, not just broadcasting ideas, but maintaining a physical base of operations for radicalization right there on the ground in India.
And while he was gathering all this critical evidence, he apparently faced a potentially fatal close call, proving just how razor-thin the margin for error was.
Oh, yeah. This was during a calligraphy class, which the agent was attending just to maintain his cover, blend in. He was writing alongside the students, and one particularly sharp student noticed his handwriting. It didn't quite match the specific Turkish typescript that was apparently being subtly promoted there. The student immediately questioned him, why is your script different?
Oof. The atmosphere must have gone instantly tense. What did he do? How did he handle that?
He maintained perfect calm, just textbook fieldcraft. Instead of panicking or making up some convoluted excuse, he calmly put his hand on the boy's shoulder and simply stated he was from Amroha. Amroha is a region known for its own distinct style of Urdu script. It was just enough of a local cultural explanation to completely diffuse the situation, avoided exposure. Pure field genius, really.
Wow, that quick thinking literally kept him alive long enough to confirm the final piece, right? That the entire local operation was being run by 2 senior Maulanas operating within the madrasa. The targets were identified.
Correct. With all the evidence secured, digital, human, documentary, the IB moved into the final critical phase, extraction. The objective was a flawless takedown. 0 collateral damage, 0 public outcry.
And the strategy for getting the 2 Maulanas out. It was simple but brilliant, wasn't it?
Yeah.
They needed them gone without alerting anyone.
Yes, they manufactured a lure. The IB sent a fake, very official-looking letter to the madrasa. It invited the 2 senior Maulanas to a high-profile minority education conference, supposedly organized by the Jama Masjid in Rohini, Delhi. The bait worked perfectly. The Maulanas, seeing this as a prestigious invitation, immediately left, and they placed the children temporarily under the care of who else? The trusted Dr. Zubir.
Perfect. And what happened when they reached Delhi for this conference?
Well, the Maulanas checked into the booked hotel in Rohini, which of course was actually an expertly disguised IB safe house. Once they were confirmed inside, they were immediately detained and taken in for interrogation. The removal from the field was clean, instantaneous, and completely invisible to the public and the local community back in Saharanpur.
But the operation didn't just stop with the arrests. Simultaneously, the IB started the legal and administrative dismantling of the physical structure itself. to ensure this network couldn't just, restart the next day with new people.
Exactly. And this is a textbook example of using administrative law as a nonviolent counterterrorism tool. So simultaneously with the extraction in Delhi, notices started arriving at the madrasa site back in UP. First, one from the local panchayat stating the land was not Waqf property, meaning it wasn't legally recognized Islamic trust land. Then a second notice declared the structure itself was built illegally on government land. And finally, a letter arrived from the UP Minority Department confirming the madrasa completely lacked registration in official state records.
So basically, the structure had absolutely zero legal standing, which cleared the way for the final act.
Precisely. About a week later, a bulldozer arrived and quietly demolished the illegal structure. No arrests were made publicly at the site, no protests erupted, because the government action was based purely on documented land violations and lack of registration. Very clean.
And the children. What was the outcome for the youth who were caught up in this whole ideological crossfire?
They were the absolute priority. The children were removed safely. Their devices were seized as evidence, naturally. And they were immediately moved to de-radicalization centers. They underwent necessary psychological counseling before being safely placed in registered, legally recognized madrasas. The goal was to ensure their proper education continued, but without the threat of that ideological poisoning.
The most defining feature of this entire deep dive, for me, is that the operation concluded with absolute, total silence, zero publicity, no protests, no media headlines shouting out it, no medals handed out in public, just two IB officers, the technical asset back in Delhi and the human asset, Dr. Zubir, on the ground, managing the situation perfectly, and then just quietly moving on to their next assignment. These really are the silent warriors protecting the ideological fabric of the country.
Yeah, and if you connect this to the bigger picture, this operation demonstrates a really integrated approach. It completely bypassed traditional, often controversial police action. The IB used technical surveillance, they used human intelligence, and they used official legal and administrative mechanisms, all working together to dismantle the network. It ensured the solution was complete, it was legal, and crucially, nonviolent.
This whole operation really highlights that knowledge is power, doesn't it? And that ideological warfare is often conducted through the absence of things like registration or through the strategic blurring of legal lines. Maybe the next time you encounter information out there that seems designed to divide, maybe pause and consider where that digital trail might truly begin.
Yeah.
And how many silent defenses might be working right now behind the scenes to protect you.
And to hear more about these types of deep, often silent operations, kindly subscribe to our channel. Thank you.